man don't know shit.
Alright, man, this is kind of cool. Sorry for the little delay between videos, gang, but hey, that's life and I've been busy. But check it out, today I get to hang out with somebody that I met in the late 90s and did some shows together back then, and it's none other than Mr. Vic Ruggiero, singer from the Slackers and all-around great musician and great guy. We've hooked up here and there over the years, and yeah, it was just good to chill out a bit and talk about all kinds of stuff that we both have in common and enjoy and like. So I hope you enjoy the show, and don't forget, there's a virtual tip jar under here because I don't monetize this channel. I don't put ads on it and stuff like that because I figure if anybody wants to donate anything, they may as well get listed for their donation. So whether it's 25 cents, 50 cents, $5 or more or whatever it is, if you do a donation, you'll be listed as a producer on the next show, and that's how this runs. It's all DIY style. So yeah, enjoy the show, gang. I had a great time sitting down with my guest today, and yeah, I hope you like it as much as I did. All right, let's get it on.
K-Man don't know shit.
There he is. How you doing, my brother?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing great, man. Good morning.
Oh yeah, well, it's been, afternoon for me over here. This is like, it's the evening already, but I'm barely together. This is how I am.
Man, it was funny. I was just thinking about the last time I saw you, and I realized it was when the last time we were in Germany.
Yeah.
I think you were playing at the Flying Monkey or something like that, and we're playing a small little place across the street.
Monkeys, not the Monkeys in Hamburg, was it? Was it in Hamburg?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, I turned the sound off for a second. I don't know how I did that. I screwed up.
I got you loud and clear there.
All right, good. Oh, yeah. So,
yeah,
it was Monkeys. It was Monkeys in Hamburg. Is that where it was? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And across the street for the smaller bands, we played in this really crazy hostel type venue, and people are smoking cigarettes in your face and getting all crazy and stuff. Then we went and hang out. We found out you guys were across the street.
Yeah. They're crazy. I tell you, in Germany, it's really funny because it's, and I mean, I guess I find it in a few countries in Europe, but the Germans, it's like once they want to go there, and it's like, oh well, we can smoke in here. It's like they smoke more than anybody ever smoked in the history of smoking. They smoke more than the French,
I've never seen anything like it, man. It's wild.
Oh my God! I mean, like really, because they were one of the countries where they outlawed smoking indoors. It was one of the first. I think they were one of the first ones that did it. And it was great. It was like, oh, this is great. Now I get to play the show and nobody's smoking at me. As soon as one person disobeys or they decide, oh, it's a smoking night, like everybody decides to have a cigarette, like even if they don't smoke, they're like, okay, fine, I'll have a cigarette tonight.
It's funny because it reminded me, like, I mean, I smoke on and off, right? And I used to like it back in the day when I smoked in bars. But then once it stopped and then to go into it again, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
I know. Well, that's the same with me. I smoked for many years. I quit when I started touring because I realized it was not working for me. It was like I had to keep a certain level of throat and lung health that was like, okay, as a singer, it's a different ball game. If I was a guitar player or just a keyboard player, no problem. It's a lot easier, But
I often tell the guys in the band the exact same thing. I'm like, man, sometimes I wish I was playing bass there, being all cool all the time and nothing mattered, but I stopped opening my mouth and put out noise the next day.
I know it really is. It's a totally different, when your instrument is connected to your body, it is your body. Everything else becomes a very different thing. Hey, let me make sure my phone is plugged in properly. I'm seeing that, like, for some reason it keeps showing up that that my battery's low, but I'm plugged into the wall, so I should be I should have power. I mean, oh yeah. Okay, yeah, it's charging. Okay. I just wanted to make
There you
sure that
go.
like my charger wasn't bad or something like that, because
Yeah, man. Hey, cheers, by the way. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday. So where you at? You're up in Montreal?
Yeah, I'm just chilling at home right now, through this whole COVID thing and, putting some time into the podcast a little bit and writing some songs, trying to stay busy basically like everybody else, you know?
Oh man,
Are you you're in New York right now?
I'm in New York right now, and I generally don't, stay in New York. I'm usually like traveling everywhere. So this is the longest stint I've been in New York in years. I mean, like literally, like this could be the longest I've been in New York since the 90s. Really?
Wow. You know, the first time I met you was in the 90s. I was in another band back then, and it was one of our first shows was opening up for you guys in NDG at the reggae bar out there. And
Yeah.
I remember because Marcus and my bass player at the time both had those huge Ampeg amps. One of them had the 810 speakers, and my boy Timmy had the 215s, and right away they looked at each other, and they just thought Mount Monster sound, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where I know that we would always ask, if we were getting ready to load in, we would always send somebody in first and see if there was already one of those in there. Because if there's one in there, it's like, I don't want to carry that up the stairs if we don't have to, I mean,
yeah, man, that thing's brutal.
yeah, and same with us. If we showed up first, we were always more than willing to share this stuff, because it's like, yeah, there's no need to have two of those on stage unless you're like, you want to be like the Stones in the 70s or something, It's like,
yeah, with other people carrying it, right?
yeah. I mean, they're great. They're great amps. I won't deny. But
Absolutely.
We used to play this show up in Montreal, and it was right in that. It's right down there where the cafe. What's it called that we play there? The
Cafe Campus.
Yeah. So it's right around the corner we used to play, and it's a second floor venue.
The swimming. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, swimming. That's right. And we would go up. Of course, the slackers, we never planned right. And so we'd always end up there in the middle of winter at some point, which is like, we'd be up there in January, February, whatever. And the load-in for that place was around the back, and it was this steel iron
That's
steps.
right, the cage. Yeah.
Oh, my God. And I remember that one time we're loading that thing up, the steps, and it's icy and it's wet and it's snow everywhere. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm like, can we just not bring this thing? I'm like, can't you use something else? And Marcus gets upstairs only to reveal to me that, in fact, only one speaker of the 8 speakers in the 8x10 is working at the moment. And I'm like,
what a guy.
What? I'm like, are you kidding? There's one out of 7 is working. I said, so instead of 8, in this 8x10 that's as big as a refrigerator, we could basically bring this amp that's as big as a TV set, And I was like,
well, bass players, they love that shit, man.
Oh. So I remember giving him such a hard time about it and being so pissed off, because it was like, you're putting my fucking life in your hand. I'm taking my life in my hands here, loading this crap up a icy metal staircase in the winter, and one speaker. I was like, that's it. Well, I'm not loading this thing in anymore unless you fix all of them. And I think we made a point. I think I made a point to, like, it's one of my few moments of like supervising anybody, where I was like, you take those and I want to watch you put those in and I'm going to test it, make sure they all work. My God.
That's hilarious. I'm going to remember that little lesson you just taught me too on my boys. It's funny, when I think of you, Vic, I think about somebody, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this, but I know for a fact that you're really into recording as well as being a musician. So when I think of you, I always think of you as a vintage instrument and recording guy.
Oh, well, vintage in the sense that my instruments are not, they're never new. I specialize in $60 guitars. That's my specialty. I'm looking at my guitar right here. This guy, I mean, like, I remember I bought this guitar. This is my Japanese. It's a Taisco. And I bought this. It was literally in a trash pile in Houston, in San Antonio, Texas. And I mean, it didn't look much different than it looks. It was all beat up and it had some big cracks in it. So I had to go and, like, you know, shoe-goo the cracks. So I forget what I put in it. But I finally got my my guitar expert buddy to help me glue it properly, finally. And he was like, thank God, Vic. He's like, thank God you finally glued it together, because that thing was like split. You've been playing it split in half for years, you know?
That's hilarious. You know, it's funny because, like, I have a lot of guitar playing friends, as you do. And, you know, a lot of them are really into nice new instruments because they're fantastic. But there's one thing that I did realize about the whole vintage instrument, and this goes for recording as well. Sometimes, I believe anyway, it's the imperfections that give it character and tone as well. Because if I take all new instruments and plug them into a modern amp, they all end up sounding perfect and the same.
Definitely, definitely. No, old instruments, I am a believer always in the character of an instrument. Marcus, although, you know, we may disagree about hauling, you know, giant amps up the stairs. We both agree. We always say, if an instrument has one good sound, that's all it should have. One, maybe two, if it's got, like, oh, I can do this with it, I can do that with it. You don't need it to be everything. You just need it to be one or two things. And
I totally agree with that, totally, because a lot of people, even when they set up their amps, when they're thinking about different sounds, what they're doing is kind of sacrificing one sound for the other, right? Instead of going all in on one sound.
Definitely, definitely. No, I mean, I have a lot of, you know, I mean, I'm a believer in if I wanted to go a certain way, you know, like with this guitar, I just always put heavy strings on it to make sure that it's got that, you know. But then again, because it's got heavy strings and it's got pretty high action and it's got a big thick neck. Well, not super thick. But it's a pretty
That's
hefty
a fatty.
neck. Yeah. So I always play it open. I always play open chords. I have it set up to play open, basically. When I have to play a gig and I got to, like, if I'm playing a rock and roll gig and I'm playing all the chords and I'm bar chords and stuff, my hand gets so tired. It's not really a guitar that's meant for that, you know?
Yeah. You don't want to play an hour and a half straight gig, right?
No, I mean, if I'm gonna play like a real punk, like, you know, somewhere I actually have to bar the chords. Now, see, with reggae, this is a great reggae guitar, because with reggae, you don't have to put your fingers down. You just put them kind of in the place, you know, and you
has a little bounce in it, right?
Yeah, but you don't actually fret it. You just kind of rest your fingers lightly. And same thing with the pick parts. Okay, pick parts, no problem, because then it's like a bass. So then I play the pick parts. I used this guitar on a gig with Keith and Tex, where I wasn't even supposed to be a guitar player on that show. I was hired as a keyboard player. But then we realized we had two keyboard players on the gig. We always did that for these reggae shows. And on the Keith and Tex tracks, they're actually really guitar heavy. So there's only one keyboard, if any, on the records. But there's a lot of pick guitar. There's a Lynn Tate was on. I think he was on a lot of those songs, because that was like Derek Harriott, and I forget where they recorded it. But so I was like, oh, can I be the pick player? Because I love that. That's my, you know. And so Agent J and I kind of like tossed it up. Like, he was like, yeah, but I like those pick parts. And I was like, well, either you want to play the skank or the pick. I'm like, we can trade off for some if there's some you really want, like if you want to be the lead or something. I said, but I'm totally fine to be the rhythm section pick player. That's all me. That was one of the most fun gigs I ever played in my life.
I'm sure, absolutely. What did you get into first, the keys or the guitar? The chicken or the egg, the keys or the guitar, you know? Yeah,
you know, I played piano because it was around my house. When I was a little kid, we had a piano around the house. So piano was my first intro to instruments. But then my mother always played guitar. So we had an acoustic guitar hanging on the wall all the time. You know, like a nylon string, classical.
Amazing. I love them.
Yeah, I love them too. The nylon strings are beautiful. And I know a lot of guitar players that really swear by nylon strings. It's funny. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And especially if you're just playing alone at home and even skanking and stuff, I like the sound with the nylon strings. You know, it has that little snap on them. I really like them.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the guys that I tour with sometimes, this guy Simon Chartier, we did a couple of records recently, and he carries around a little backpacker guitar, one of those little Martin backpackers, nylon strings.
Yeah.
He practices on it constantly. That's his practice guitar everywhere he goes. And he's like, I got to tell you, if I could play nylon strings for every gig, he's like, I'd do it. Yeah.
Man, that's wild. Hey, you know what album I heard the other day that had me thinking about you? I heard The Nods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the original Slackers. That's the original 5-piece band that we started as, or whatever, 4 or 5-piece.
It's funny because I found I could really relate to that sound coming from my background, which was reggae, ska, and kind of garage stuff a lot as well, right?
Yeah.
And it really brought that across, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. Was that your first thing that you did?
That was the way that the Slackers started. So, you know, I mean, I came out of punk. So I was in punk bands and stuff before and blues. I love blues. So that was my entree to music, was that kind of stuff. And then when I found the ska and reggae scene, I thought I fit more like in the sense of a two-tone kind of, you know, that's where I heard myself being like, oh, this is what I have to give. And so I started the band kind of with that intention to be more of a two-tone sounding band. And obviously, right, blues goes right in there because, you know, that scene, it's all connected. Everything from the Yardbirds, you know, to the Stones and everything. We're all listening to the same music, you know. So
absolutely. I mean, it all came from there. Like just the other day, I've been listening to Muddy Waters, and man, I was listening to John Lee Hooker, one of the old vinyls that I have upstairs. And I was like, I hadn't listened to it a long time. Next thing you know, that led into Robert Johnson, and I just couldn't stop, man. I got on that train and I went deep, you know.
Yeah. I think blues records are what I'm as more likely to put on a blues record almost than a reggae record. I feel like reggae is in my life, and it's, you know, it's everything I've done for the past, you know, however many 30 years or something. But when I look at the records that I have out, I see Lightning Hopkins, I see John Lee Hooker. I mean, there's an Upsetters record in there too, right up front, but you know, I'm just as likely to listen to that. That's kind of still feeding. Well, like another one up there is X, you know. Now X is one of those bands that's really tied to the roots too. You listen to them and you hear straight up country music. You hear all the stuff that they listen to. It's very upfront, and I feel like the Slackers were like that too. We put our influences right up front, you know.
Well, it's interesting, like this whole topic, because I was talking with a friend the other day, and what I realized, I've known this inside me for a long time, is, I play a ton of ska and reggae, okay? But I always find that the influences outside of that, like even whether it was heavy metal, blues, even some classical Latino type bits, and I find that with the genre of ska and reggae, whatever I listen to on the outside is so easily to put those flavors into the ska and reggae. And I think that's one of the beauties of ska and reggae, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one of those things. It's fair to say that reggae, as a thing of its own, is something that is constantly amalgamating other influences, even more so than other music types. Like, you know, blues, you don't see people covering songs from outside of the blues scene. They have their own repertoire. But reggae is always covering music. It's practically a covers genre, you know?
Well, absolutely, because outside of the drums and the skank, you can basically do anything, right? You know, if I'm not mistaken, you once did a Bon Jovi song, Wanted Dead or Alive, in a reggae version.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites to play it. And, you know, and we were so upset when we were going on we were supposed to be on it was a heavy metal compilation. It was a hair metal compilation. And they were like, okay, they wanted bands to cover the great hits of the hair metal days. So, we were like, we tried to pick all the songs that we thought, cool. It's, maybe they'll let us do a Black Sabbath song. They're not quite hair metal, but, maybe they'll let us do, I don't know. We tried to pick every song, AC/DC, like whatever. Well,
it's funny. The reason I knew, check this out. The reason I knew that is because I started playing a reggae version of Wanted Dead or Alive. And I was told Vic did it.
That's ridiculous. It's a pretty good song, I gotta say. They made it. They got a pretty good song. Yeah. There's worse. There's way worse. You know what I mean?
Well, a good song is a good song, and a good song can be done in any style, my friend.
That's the truth, and I've always thought that, because that's when I write. When I write songs, I don't write them always in one style. Okay, some songs are a reggae song. I kind of know they come out as a reggae song. But I'd say most of the songs I write are just, it's a song. Play it how you want,
That's why it's really interesting to me, like, talking to a fellow songwriter. I mean, like, we're all surrounded by musicians, and a lot of people will add parts to songs and stuff like that. But somebody that actually sits down, blank paper or blank mind, and just have to dream up that initial song and kind of, start from there. Because I find people that have to do that are a whole different breed, and it's not just about being a musician. It's about being able to kind of dream up something before you even playing it.
Well, it's, I don't know. With songwriting, it's funny. I feel like songwriting is, it's one of those things that, like, it's like speaking, or being a good speaker, or a speech writer, or anything. You look for things that are catchy. You look for something that's like, oh, that's a phrase. And, what do we remember about great speakers? We remember, think not what your country can do for you. Think what you can do for your country, It's these, like, oh, hey, that's a hook. I'll remember that, old soldiers.
I never thought of that. You're right, though. I guess speech writers have to have hooks too, right?
Yeah, they're good talkers, So, of course, what I remember learning was that I'd get more from reading, like when it comes to songwriting. I get more inspiration from reading books, or from listening, watching movies, or walking around the street, listening to people talk with each other. Actually, would be a big, part of what goes into my head. And then I'd be like, oh wow, that's a cool line,
Yeah. It's amazing where we can get all our, some people call it inspiration or whatever it is. Some people are in tune with what's going around them and kind of, taking stuff in. Now, we talked about the nods bit. Let's talk a bit of history for a second. Now, because I'm not growing younger, I grow older. That's why I've known you for so long, right?
Yeah.
I knew about the nods, and that's kind of the beginning of the Slackers. Now, the Slackers have recorded at least 10 albums, have been on tour across the world over and over and over.
Yeah. How
did this all happen, man?
Oof. Well, it was all very in small steps, as everything, We used to make 2-year pacts with the band that we would all go to a bar, and we'd sit there and we'd say, okay, if you want to leave now, because if you don't leave now, you're in for the next 2 years. It was like joining the army, And we're like, if you're gonna ditch out mid battle over here, that's not helping anybody. So go home, think about it, tell us tomorrow, whatever it is. But it was commitment for 2 years at a time. Usually we'd make a record, we'd say, okay, we're gonna make the record and we're gonna tour on the record. And
that's a really interesting way to hear it. I think so many bands could actually learn from that, because how many bands do put out an album and then one guy realizes right away that he can't do tour life, or does 1 week and he's like, I just can't handle this. It's not me and all that. But, it fucks up your whole rhythm of what you're trying to accomplish if somebody bails at the wrong time. I like that. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, we had some guys in the band like Dave our sax player, Dave, right? Dave has always been one of the organizational guys. He did it under duress. It was not his desire. He just wanted to be a sax player in a band.
Shout out to Dave, man.
Yeah, I know. Poor Dave. I realized early on, I think a couple of us realized early on that Dave was really smart and really together. And it was like, come on, Dave, you can do this, man. We need your help. And he was like, oh, God, why, But he would think about things like that. And he'd say, we gotta make the record. We're going to go in and record. It's going to take 6 months before it's out in the stores or whatever. It's out and we can bring it on the road. He's like, and then we got to go on the road. So we have to make a commitment. We have to say this, and he had done it before and he had seen bands fall apart that he was in. He was in that band Donkey Show when he was a kid.
Oh.
And I think they were like a classic, they did all the mistakes. They made all the mistakes that you can make. Everything from, traveling across the Rocky Mountains in a school bus to, thinking they were rock stars at 18 years old and getting really cocky. Like they did the whole thing. So, he came into it with some experience. I don't think the rest of us, we'd all just been in a couple of local bands. We'd just done local stuff. A lot of us had never left New York playing. So, it seemed logical. I think we're a logical bunch and we're a pretty committed bunch.
Well, it helps. I often say you can't just rely on talent alone or doing something that's good. Because if you're in a crew that pushes, nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
So then, were the other members in the Slackers in the Nods as well?
So, yeah, basically the Nods, we had this period of a band like that. We knew we wanted to be a band, but we didn't know what we wanted to be, and we didn't know what our name was. And so Marcus and I, being the best slackers that we could possibly be, even before we knew it, decided we were going to change our name every week for the band, and that's the kind of band we were going to be. And it was utterly ridiculous. So we went through names and names and names, hoping one would stick. And, finally, I don't know how the Slackers stuck, but we went back and we looked at that time period, even as we were figuring out the repertoire. And I was like, well, it's like, it really was a different band. You could have called it many names, but the Nods really seemed to be like, that summed it up. It was like, okay, this was, I thought about it was like, the land of Nod, like from the Bible. In the early part of the Bible, when Adam and Eve are hanging out, Cain and Abel, right? They have the brothers that, and Cain kills Abel, mm-hmm. and he runs off to the land of Nod. And I was like, well, hey, as far as we knew, there was only Eden. I didn't know that anything else existed. They didn't tell us about it in the Bible. But there was this other place that existed concurrently that they never talk about. And I thought, well, that's a fitting name.
I get it. I finally get it. I never even would have thought of that.
Yeah, so that was the brother that ran off to the other land. And we don't know. It existed, but we don't talk about it. I guess it's just the past. So, and that was the Nods. And of course, it was a different band, even though I think we play maybe 2 songs still. I think 2 or 3 now. We just started playing one of the songs called Sleep Outside. It's one of our new singles. Because back then, back in New York in the 80s, actually, back when I wrote that song, there was a big homeless problem in New York. And we all were used to the idea of, we were used to the idea of screwing up our apartments, getting evicted. Things were happening. And
life.
30 years later, it seems a lot, just as relevant, if not more relevant than it used to. I'm much more likely to go sleep in a tent in the park now than I, back then it was just fun, So.
Well, you're one of the bands that I look up to because of, I like bands that are touring musicians. I call them lifers, and it's for sure that every person in your band is a lifer at what he does, whether, they sidestep and do other things or not, but you guys are lifers. And for me, that's basically who I have on my show is like, the people that are doing it, and doing it for real, because music, it's all part of this package. And you guys have toured basically the world, and nonstop. It's encouraging for other bands, and I think that being able to see other bands doing it's like, okay, yeah, we're doing the right thing. We're doing what the Slackers are doing, man. We're trying to get out there and play as much as possible. And I got to thank you for that, for not showing the world or the people the hard part of that, and you guys are just out doing it day in, day out, and it's really what's the word, it's inspirational. It really is, and I really fucking cheers to that, man.
Well, that's cool. Thanks. I mean, to us, it's the only way to stay alive. I mean, we just kept it like, there's only a few people that get to be a local band and live off that. And a lot of that, it gets frustrating anyway, because you start to get captured by your locality. You become local heroes. You play the local bar. People don't really take you that serious after a while. It gets tough. And there are guys that do it, like New Orleans, for example, is one of the greatest places to be a local musician. New York is one of those places you used to be able to do it, and I think it's possible, but it's not easy. So to be a musician and live off being a musician, you kind of have to be a shark and constant motion, constant swimming,
Absolutely. And it's weird, that whole effect. I mean, like, you're talking about the bands that are local. It's weird how you go out on the road for 3 or 4 months and come home, all of a sudden you're bigger at home now too. That's always a weird concept to me.
Yeah. We noticed it the first time, actually, that we sold out a show in Florida. It was the first time we had ever sold out a place. And we used to go down to this place in Orlando. And I guess there's a good New York, Florida connection. But we came back to New York, and people suddenly took us more seriously. They said, wow, our friends told us that they saw this great band down in Florida called the Slackers. And we thought, what? So we better go back and see what's up with the Slackers now, Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's get to recording for a second. A long time ago, I have a buddy whose name is Steve Beauchesne. I don't know if you remember Steve, but he runs Beau's Beer, and he used to play in a band called Caribou Slick, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking to me before he went to see you, saying he was all excited because he was going to work with you and you were going to help him record his first album or something like that. This going back many years there.
That was Constable Brennan. That was the band.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. But I remember how excited he was to work with you. And then, I kind of knew you existed at that point, because we're talking like 90s here, right? And then I'm like, man, he's so excited to work with this dude, Vic, I better check out who is this guy, Vic, and here we are like in 30 years later talking.
Yeah. Well, that band, that was wild, really, that was, they were such a cool punk band. And the thing I liked about them was similar to, like, you're talking about the Nods and all of our style. They really had this garagey sound, and Steve was playing organ. And he had this great old, like, Farfisa or Vox organ or something.
Exactly. And my cousin Sam was the singer.
Oh, really? You're Sam's cousin? Oh,
yeah, man.
Oh, I love Sam. He's one of the best. I mean, those guys are superstars. But basically, as I look at it, Sam, Steve, Jamie. I forget who the drummer was at the time.
Daryl.
But I mean, those guys, let me tell you, wow. To me, those guys were superstars. And, like, they just, I guess they just chose not to be the insane musician life that we chose. But I'm always sad that they didn't.
It's a big life decision, right?
I can't fault anybody for not doing it, except for the fact that when you see people that are really talented, like Sam, for example, he's exactly the kind of guy I would get mad at and be like, how dare you keep this to yourself? How can you not be in a band constantly? How can you not,
Hey, Sam, I got to interrupt you, Vic. This is a message for Sam. You hear what Vic said, Sam? I'm coming for you. Pick up that guitar, brother.
Yeah, really, because there's guys that we've been in bands with a lot of people, and we've toured with a lot of different bands. And there's always a couple of guys that are the standout guys in the group, you know? And it's funny how somebody will just like, you know, it'll be like, oh, did you hear about so-and-so, the trumpet player? He quit, he got married and he got a job. And I'd be like, oh, not him. Of all the guys in the band, that was the guy? I'm like, you know, they could have taken anybody, you know, the guitar player or the, you know, the bass player who just likes to show up and drink the beer in the backstage, you know? But it had to be, yeah, that guy, you know?
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's funny you're talking about, like, you know, you can't blame somebody for not choosing that lifestyle. It goes for the same for people that are the partners of people in bands, right? Like, how many people just like,
God.
you know, my lady, she had to do that too, but I can't fault anybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big life decision, and there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with it.
No, yeah, that's not easy. I reconnected with one of my old girlfriends recently. And, man, she didn't, you know, she hadn't talked to me for like decades, you know, and it wasn't because it ended badly. It just, I think it was just a different life, you know, but, I realized in retrospect that that's what wrecked, you know, and I guess I kind of knew it at the time too. That's what wrecked that relationship. And we just said, okay, let's throw the relationship onto the fire and let it burn, you know. It was kind of a bummer because, you know, you don't know which is supposed to be more important. It's like, okay, this is my vocation. This is my mission in life. This is what I'm trying to do. And then at the same time, it's like, you know, you want to have your other parts of life. You want to be happy. You want to, you know, have love, have some kind of stability and security. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, that's not that
absolutely. Well, that's it. I mean, like, you know, I'm going through it right now as we speak right now. And I can't even fault anybody for it. All I can do is say thank you for the time that you put in.
Yeah. Oh, it's difficult. It's difficult.
So how you been keeping busy during COVID?
Well, you know, at the beginning of it, it didn't seem like, you know, I took out all these books to read and I dragged out all my records. I organized my records for the first time in a decade. I got so busy with Slacker's stuff. I got so busy with trying to work out I started kind of working on some like personal stuff and just like really like being like attentive and being like, okay, these are the things I need to do. Here's my list. You know, things I put off for the past decade, records that were hiding in my hard drives or, you know, hidden on a CD somewhere in my storage space that needed to be dug out and mastered or something. I've been so busy that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't have time to like eat. I gotta, you know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. I could say the exact same thing. Like, one thing I noticed is that, you know how you're talking about getting to those little projects that you haven't had time to. But I mean, that's exactly it. I've always been like, go, 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 forced to stop. And all of a sudden I'm getting some really important shit done too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you still doing any recording at all?
Well, you know, it's funny. I was always I still record stuff. I don't, have a studio that I work out of or anything like that. And I basically, I think at a certain point I handed over like the Slackers like recording job over to Jay because I realized that Jay was a lot more together as an engineer. He's a lot more meticulous and he's, you know, I was never a good technician when it came to be like, really as an engineer, I'm quite a shoddy engineer. But
oh, I feel you, man. I feel you totally, man.
You know, it's all hot. It's all hot. And I feel like the music gets through if I can get the music through. And then I give it to my mastering guy, and the mastering guy makes sense of it. And I thank him every time, and I go, I can't believe that you made this sound like a record. You're a magician, you know.
Exactly. I find the worst thing to do is to record my own stuff because I get into this weird headspace where I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. I like garage stuff and it doesn't matter if some things are peeking out and some things not because I like that. But you know what? And the general population might not be on my same wave, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I'll go back and listen to stuff. and I'll hear the imperfections and things that I thought were perfect, and I'm like, oh wow, the world is actually quite forgiving of technical errors, you know. But if you leave me alone with my computer, I mean, my recording setup is literally now, it's just a computer that sits on my bed here, a little microphone, you know, microphone card or whatever. It's really simple, but I'll sit there and I'll pick at like, oh, no, that's not right. I'll edit it, or I'll redo a part to get it in between the lines so I don't blast out, you know, something. I mean, I don't know. It's difficult. And digital is also difficult. Tape is really where you can kind of go overboard and fuck up, and it's forgiving.
It keeps you in the zone, right?
It keeps you in the zone. That's why it's a classic. That's why it works.
Oh, for sure, man. So what do you think? Like, I was talking, you know, Ephraim, right? From Voodoo Glow Skulls?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
He was on the last episode, and we were talking about what's going to, you know, after COVID for us bands that like to be on the road a lot, and how that's going to work out, and when that's going to work out, and, you know, are there going to be big changes that come out of this? Do you have any like feelings of something that's going to be different after all this for being on the road?
God, I mean, all I know is that when I look at the people in America, I am always frustrated that, you know, people aren't taking this stuff seriously enough, quickly enough, because I know that my job relies on people being squashed into small spaces, sharing germs. Like, you know, the fact that I have, I mean, I think about my relationship with microphones. You know, I walk into a bar and I mean, okay, nowadays I have my own microphone or whatever, but I mean, that microphone has lived in bars and it's around people, and there's no telling, you know, other people probably sing into it here and there. It falls on the floor and I put my mouth against it, and then I play the keyboards, and then I grab the microphone and I pick something, I wound my chords up, and there's a lot of germs, you know?
It's wild, you know. I always go back to this old story. I don't understand people that don't have their own microphones on the road. To me, you know, a lot of places rely on the venue microphones. But then I remember playing a show in around 1999, and the opening band was this hardcore lesbian, we're gonna fuck the world and take over, and women power, and I'm all for it, I'm on the board and everything. And then she takes the microphone, puts it up her skirt, then leaves it there, and I didn't have a microphone with me. What am I supposed to use after that?
Yeah. I never bring my own microphone. I use the microphone. I mean, we have a sound guy now, and over the past, I'd say in the past 6 years, because I think we've been using sound guys for about 6 years now. That's the only time I've had a consistent microphone that he uses the same one for me. Now that means for the 20 years that preceded that, I depend on the microphone from the club, which has been shoved up somebody's ass the night before. And, you know.
And penicillin.
Yeah, and they probably do that little thing where they spray, you know. If I'm lucky, they spray a little disinfectant on it.
I think you're dreaming. I haven't seen any sound man ever clean one of those in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I know that once in a while I'll get them. I used to get a microphone and I'd be like, okay, guys, you need to change me out this microphone. This thing literally smells like the barroom floor, you know, like there's so much beer in this mic, you know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. Hey, Vic, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out. It's hard to be social in these times, and this is pretty much the only way I can do it. And to talk to people that I don't get the chance to talk for, it was a complete pleasure, my friend. I have to end it now because I have a hard disk problem. I can't go over an hour at all, and I'm not sure where we're at. And
all right.
I will ask you again in the future if you want to come back anytime, because, dude, it's a pleasure hanging out with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, man. It's nice to talk. You know, you're an easy guy to talk to.
Cheers, my brother. Before we go, is there anything you want to tell people out there about what's coming up or anything like that, or just let life be life?
Well, with the Slackers have a new single out on Pirates Press, and we have a couple of others that are in the making. I think on August 1st, which is coming up in a couple days, We have a live stream that the Slackers are doing. You know, I don't know what it's on, but I think it's, you know, if you look on our Facebook and Instagram, the info's all there. And I think the Pie Tasters are involved in that, and also our old buddy Boss Harms, that's DJ Boss Harmony. So it should be a really cool thing. That's what's coming up right now. I got a bunch of records
Right
out
on.
on being, you know. So.
Well, my brother, great seeing you again. I just hope you are doing well, and you tell all your boys, send them my love, and I wish everybody, you know, to be doing great. And after all this is done, we'll go have that beer.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my ass up to Montreal. Believe me, I am really missing you guys, especially in the summer. Whew.
Yeah, brother. All right, peace out.
All right, man. Later.
Later.
Oh, so I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm going to get back to doing more consistent episodes again. I got a few lined up already. And yeah, don't forget the virtual tip jar is underneath if you want to be, you know, support the channel by a minuscule donation and be a producer of the next show. Go ahead. That's how this works. It's all DIY and community. So stay cool, gang. A lot more stuff coming up soon. And yeah, just fucking stay safe and love your people. Peace.